Matvei Gridin, the skill, the confidence have made him the most recent reason that Flames fans should at least believe in what's coming up next.
You're Locked On Flames, your daily podcast on the Calgary Flames. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to this edition of Locked On Flames, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the number one sports podcast network. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. It is last call for football on FanDuel. If you're a new customer, bet just $5 and get $200 in bonus bets if you win. A reason for hope. We'll dive into the case of Matvei Gridin and what he means for the Calgary future. Also, final game before the Olympic break, Edmonton taking on Calgary, the final Battle of Alberta on Wednesday. We'll preview that matchup with Locked On Oilers host Nick Zararis. And then this week in Calgary history. A time the Flames put up 13 goals against the Sharks and a goalie record to boot. My name is Ryan G. I am a lifelong play-by-play broadcaster based in the Pacific Northwest and have been a fan of the Flames for a few decades since Peter Marr was the play-by-play broadcaster narrating my experience of the 2004 Stanley Cup Final. What a ride it's been. Under a month since Matvei Gridin was brought back to the Flames roster, recalled from the AHL, and it's been fun to see what he's brought to this team. Certainly getting a goal on home ice in the matchup against San Jose. You have the Flames highlighting some of the accomplishments from this 19-year-old. Only two teenagers have scored as many goals in a season for the Flames over the past 10 years. Granted, Gridin only has 2 goals total, so it's not like this number is outstanding or certainly extraordinary, but still, Matthew Tkachuk had 6 back in 2017, 2018, and still a teenager in 2016-17, the year before, with 13 goals, and Sam Bennett back in 2015-16 had 18 of those. But Gridin, 10.5 shot percentage so far in the 2025-26 season. That puts him among the top 6 in Calgary scorers going into the final game before the Olympic break. And you have so much excitement for him, the way that he really impressed Craig Conroy when he was drafted. And there's a size, there's a presence on the ice that's been fun to see from Gridin. And I think that's what makes people excited about how he might be an impact type player, because Calgary fans, especially those on Team Tank, are just craving somebody who can be a presence on the ice. And when he was drafted, that's what Craig Conroy said, talking about making plays through people, around people, and whether he shoots or passes, he can do it all. There's a reason he led the USHL in scoring, and he has good size, skates well, and I love his shot too. This goes back to when he was drafted for the Calgary Flames back in 2024, and then fast forward to scoring against the San Jose Sharks and some of the things he liked about that goal, but also playing with his line mate, Morgan Frost. He shared those with NHL Flames on X.
How Frosty said before, just trying to make plays and have fun. So yeah, and that happened in the goal. So I was about to go out on the net, but then Frosty went pretty high, so I was pop out and he got a great pass to me. So yeah. He's great and great playmaker, and where he got 14 and 4 in the dot today, and that's obviously helped us to play offense more. And how he said, we're trying to have fun, and just trying to have fun, and I guess we'll score more.
Trying to have fun. That's the message you hear from those comments on the last day of January from Gridin. And it feels like he's a guy who genuinely knew that path really early on. There's sometimes when quotes are given and you kind of take it with a grain of salt, but just based on the way that he's presented himself in interviews right out of the draft, and then now as he's been part of the Flames roster for about 3, almost 4 weeks now, back on the Flames roster, to be fair, he said when he signed his entry draft contract, or entry level contract, it was my dream since I was 2 years old. The job just starts right now. And so there's, again, a presence about this guy that just makes him seem like he's a little bit ahead of schedule and capable beyond his years. And if you're looking for that young generational talent, there's a chance that Calgary may have already found somebody like that in the way that he's played. The problem with all of this is the whole point of this segment is to try to give Flames fans hope, but at the same time, we're only a handful of games into Gridin's career. So, of course, it's too early to tell. Nothing is a sure thing, but at the same time, it is kind of fun to see somebody who's part of that young core of talent for the Flames to have a reason for optimism. I mean, 2 career goals now for Calgary, and the presence on the ice, the way that he fires shots and seems like there's a nice touch off of the stick, really is exciting. And I have to laugh too, because when you look at the official NHL pronunciation guide, Matvei's last name is pronounced Gridin according to that, which you would think would be the case based on that spelling. But Gridin is how it's said on TV, said in interviews, and I think it's a fun way. It reminds me a little bit of grinding, right? And so to have him through 12 games played this year, have 4 points, and while -9 on the ice, there's a lot of Calgary Flames who are going to have that low of a plus-minus number just because Calgary is poor at scoring goals. So I think there might be some excitement, certainly, because of what he brings to this team. And, having somebody who in 12 games has put up as many points as someone like Sam Honzek had through 18 games maybe shows that Calgary has somebody already on their roster who is going to be a significant contributor for years to come. It's also worth mentioning, again, this is a first-round pick. I mean, Calgary has had back-to-back seasons with 2 picks in the opening round, and they picked Gridin 28th overall. You're talking 19 spots behind Zayne Parekh. I also think that this is pretty exciting too, because you have the opportunity to look at the Calgary Flames and somebody who is a contributor on the offensive side. That blue line and the defensive pairings for Calgary are so crowded. It's hard to figure out how to make all of the pieces work, because even in the game against the Toronto Maple Leafs on Monday, Zayne Parrekh's in the lineup. I want Zayne Parekh in the lineup, but Hunter Brzustewicz was out of the lineup as a result. And that's another young piece of the puzzle that I would like to see on the ice as well. So there's a lot of crowding with the defensive pairings for Calgary, and I'm not quite sure how everyone fits. It's exciting to look at someone like Gridin and say, oh, there's some space on the forwards, and have him be kind of already building some rapport with someone like Morgan Frost, who again is still in that container of young talent that Calgary is going to need to use in this rebuild. So there's some signs of optimism. We'll see how he competes in this Battle of Alberta. He was part of that group that played the longest season opening shootout in NHL history. So it's not like he's unfamiliar necessarily. This isn't the introduction, but still it's an opportunity for him to try and compete. So excited for that. And we'll see what happens coming up on Wednesday against Edmonton. Speaking of which, we'll preview that with the host of Locked On Oilers, Nick Zararis, former host of Locked On Flames. We'll do that when we return on this episode of the show. It's the last call for football on FanDuel. One final Sunday, one last kickoff, the final chance to get in on the action before the NFL season officially comes to a close. This is Super Bowl 60, and FanDuel is making sure you're right in the middle of it with a special offer just in time for the biggest game of the year. Whether you're backing the favorite, riding the underdog, or building one same-game parlay, this is the game everyone's been waiting for. This is where predictions turn into plays, stats into storylines, and every snap feels bigger. It's the perfect way to cap off the season and make the Super Bowl even more exciting from kickoff to the final whistle. If you're a new customer, bet just $5 and get $200 in bonus bets if you win. make it count, because after the Super Bowl, the season is over. Last call for football on FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of Super Bowl 60. Visit fanduel.com to get started. Thank you so much for making Locked On Flames your first listen every single day. And we are so excited to have the host of Locked On Oilers, Nick Zararis, joining us. And we got the Battle of Alberta coming up on Wednesday. I'm living over here in Calgary world, where it's pretty much one day we're inching closer to Team Tank, and then sometimes the team looks pretty good on the ice. But by and large, we kind of know the fate of the Calgary Flames. Why are the Oilers so inconsistent? Maybe in a similar way, although your fate obviously is going in the other direction. It's still going to be a quality playoff team. Why is this team that way?
The short answer is the goaltending is very inconsistent. You have no earthly idea what you're going to get, whether it's Ingram or Tristan Jarry. The Oilers have been very strategic in which one starts against which team. They have tried to insulate Ingram, give him the easier matchups. And then the other part of it, their bottom six just hasn't been good at 5-on-5. The top six has largely been okay. Since Zach Hyman came back mid-November, the first line's been humming. Draisaitl has been reasonably good with Podkolzin, though he went a good 3 weeks without scoring a goal, which was another question. But this is largely a team sustained by what McDavid and Draisaitl do and what their power play does. They have a lot of individual talent, and the February is going to really be the proving ground for what the bottom six is going to look like. We know they're in the market for one more forward, but their bottom six leaves a lot to be desired, and they are running really towards that empty gauge. McDavid, Bouchard, Hyman, all playing the highest average time on ice they've ever played in a regular season to this point. Draisaitl's about 20 seconds off his career high in minutes per game. They're really running at full throttle right now just to sustain where they are. It would be one thing if they were running away with the division, but they're tied for first with Vegas, and neither of these teams has been particularly impressive this year.
Yeah, Vegas has had a very tough time as of late, too. After the Rasmus Andersson trade, it's almost like Calgary might have sent a curse to Sin City. Obviously not the case, but you were very Flame-centric prior to taking over the Oilers Locked On show. I'm curious, as fans describe the only solution being to tank and get one of those top 5 draft picks, one of those top 3 draft picks, I'm curious your perspective on that. Is that something that you think is the only way forward for the Flames to become a team from what the Oilers were in the mid-2010s to where they are now?
It's one of the great questions of our time, and I think it largely comes down to what you value. If you're a fan who just wants the team to be fun to watch, to be competitive, tanking is the antithesis of what you want from your experience. If you're a results-driven person, the way I am, I would rather suck for 2 or 3 years, get a couple lotto tickets, and hopefully one of those guys is a building block. And even if the other two aren't, you can use them in a trade. And I've largely been a fan of the way Calgary's gone about this. I think they could be a touch more aggressive. I think they can get reasonably good assets. We'll see if Blake Coleman can come back before the trade deadline. I think he could get a nice haul. I know there's been a lot of reticence to move on from Nazem Kadri, but I know there are a lot of teams that would love to have a guy like that in their mix if they're pushing for a Stanley Cup. So Calgary, I understand, and they've largely approached for that volume mindset of we're going to get as many picks and prospects as we can, and we're going to figure it out. And that's the way you have to look at this, because the majority of your draft picks and your prospects aren't going to become impact players. They're not going to become building blocks, but at the very least, you're liquid. You have assets, and should a player become available, you can trade for them. And yeah, if you're Calgary, you're going to have to roll the dice on a restricted free agent in a trade and try and convince them and sell them, hey, we are going to build this team around you. Come here for the 2 or 3 years between your RFA and your UFA years, and we are going to make this the best possible experience for you. And that's how you entice more of those types of players to come. It's a tough sell right now based on where they're at. Them getting Kadri to come on the deal they did was a real coup at the time. But you look at where they're at now, and it's true of everybody. You look at it like Columbus, you look at it for all of those mid and small market teams. You have to take those risks. Winnipeg did it with Pierre-Luc Dubois. You have to take gambles on these RFAs to convince them to come, because unless you're picking in the top 5 of the draft, you don't have a direct means to get them. And it's not just a Flames problem. This is an 80% of the league problem where there are only so many star players to go around. You got to do everything you can to get one of those. You look at who wins Stanley Cups in this league. It's the teams with 3, 4, 5, 6 future Hall of Famers on them. I mean, the Panthers, the Lightning, Vegas, Tampa. These are so many good. Colorado with 2, 3, 4, 5 future Hall of Famers. And the rest of us are sitting around. The Oilers have 2, maybe 3 if Bouchard keeps doing this. And even they got ran off the ice by Florida.
I couldn't help but think of the fact that in all the twists and turns that have been this season, Calgary has still found a way to lead the series in the Battles of Alberta, which is just absolutely shocking to me. I'm curious how, from your side of the glass, you're seeing those 2 games that Calgary has won and what you expect going into Wednesday's matchup.
It's like the NFL. Division games, the records don't matter. You play the same team 3, 4, 5 times a year. You have an intimate familiarity. Everybody plays each other. And I do think the Oilers do have a bad habit of overlooking opponents, of getting out to slow starts because they're preoccupied with the next game that's on the horizon. They have been a really poor first period team this year, the Oilers, regardless of opponent. But they've gotten off to extremely slow starts. And Calgary is a team where if you give them a bite, they're going to, we can do this. And for a team that's struggled to score at times like the Flames this year, you get that first one, it suddenly starts to feel a lot easier that we get 2, we get 3, we get 4. And that's always the way I've looked at it. This league, this year in particular, where other than Colorado, it doesn't seem like anybody is all of that good. Anyone can beat anyone on any given night. And you give a team like Calgary that's taken its fair share of lumps this year a chance at a win, they're going to take it. This is one of the weirdest seasons in recent memory. And you give a team that has taken it on the chin a lot, not a freebie, but an easier game, they're going to capitalize on it.
I'm curious, Andrew Mangiapane, one of my favorite Flames players from recent past and one of the best nicknames in all of the land. I'm curious how Flames fans feel about him and how his signing is indicative of maybe some of those early free agent signings that Edmonton has brought in recent memory.
So when it comes to Mangiapane, this was the episode. This is what I talked about on the Locked On Oilers that went out on Tuesday. Was the Oilers have really had a Jekyll and Hyde situation with the players they've brought in mid-season, where Evander Kane comes in mid-season, Corey Perry comes in mid-season, John Klingberg, Kasperi Kapanen, versus the day one free agents where you signed Jeff Skinner, Victor Arvidsson, Mangiapane this past summer. And there's been a real difference in the deployment. It's not a surprise. You go from playing on one team to coming to Edmonton. You're going to play fewer minutes per game. You're not going to get on that first power play unit. And I think in the case of Mangiapane, who's somebody I've really admired his game for a long time, I think when you're that type of player where you're a grinder, a forechecker, a puck retriever, you lose even a little bit of foot speed and you're going to have a really tough time keeping up, staying impactful. And his speed stats on the edge tracker aren't terribly slower compared to what they were 2 or 3 years ago, but it's enough of a difference that I can use that plausibly to say he's a little bit slower. He's not playing on a team that's particularly suited to his skill set. That 30-goal season he had a couple years back where he was playing a lot with Backlund and Coleman. That was set up to a T for what he was good at. Forecheck, pressure, cycle, crash the net front, find open space, and be the shooter on your line. This year, he played a lot with McDavid and Nugent Hopkins. They're not going to have him shoot the puck a lot on that line. He's played a lot on the third and fourth line in the time since Hyman's come back, and he's been in and out of the lineup. We know that if the Oilers want to make any type of trade, for anyone that has any type of salary, Mangiapane's got to be traded first before they can bring anyone back in, just because of how cost prohibitive it's been. And it's not entirely his fault. The Trent Frederick deal is really the one that sticks out as the sore thumb of they really shouldn't have given out that money because they needed flexibility in season. I was in on signing Mangiapane. It's egg on my face now, but I liked the signing last summer.
Nick Zararis is the host of Locked On Oilers. How can people keep tabs with you? What's your favorite social media path?
I'm mostly still on Twitter, even though it's mostly dead. I check in on Blue Sky. I'm in the Everyday Discord server during Oiler games if you want to come chirp me, Flames fans. But I'm around. I'm definitely available.
Well, thanks for taking the time. We got the Battle of Alberta coming up on Wednesday, and we appreciate you hanging out with us. Stick around on this episode of Locked On Flames. We're going to take a look at this week in Calgary Flames history. That's next on Locked On Flames. Coming up on the Thursday edition of Locked On Flames, we'll look back at everything we learned about Calgary in the pre-Olympic break and try to figure out how Calgary moves forward, especially going into the Olympic break and getting set for a hectic stretch of just under 2 weeks that'll lead into the trade deadline on the NHL, knowing that Calgary has some pretty tradable pieces still on their roster. On Wednesday's shows, we like to take a look back at this week in Calgary history. And so we go back to February of 1993. This was inspired by a piece that was published back in 2018 from Wes Gilbertson in the Calgary Sun then. And it had to do with Calgary setting a franchise record with a 13-1 win over the San Jose Sharks. It's the most one-sided margin of victory in all of Flames history. And it got out of hand real fast. You have memories from players involved in that game. This is from Ronnie Stern, former Flames player, saying, "I was all excited. I always tell people that I thought it was the year I was going to score 20 goals, and I think I only ended up with 7 goals. Getting a hat trick in the NHL was a pretty big feat, pretty exciting when you score as few goals as I did." That was a quote shared on the Calgary Flames website, and it turns out that Ronnie Stern ended up finishing with 10 goals that year. So did have double-digit goals, as the Flames shared, for a second straight year. It ended up being the case. But at the same time, pretty impressive how Calgary ended up putting in so many goals in that game. And you also had a goalie record that happened in that matchup too. Calgary scored 3 times in the first 53 seconds, by the way, of that third period. And so it was something that just continued to kind of compound one after the other. I mentioned the Stern power play. You also had a power play from Robert Reichel in that matchup as well. Both teams had a hat trick in a 13-1 victory. But the goalie record that I thought was kind of impressive is Calgary still has the NHL record for the most points scored in a game by a goalie. And that has to do with the total that Jeff Reese put up in that matchup and was playing as the backup that night. 3 assists, which again stands as a league record, also ended up making 26 saves in that matchup. He told Calgary Flames official website, "I actually had to make a few saves. I actually played a decent game, if I remember correctly. I wasn't a top-notch puck handler. It was just one of those nights where everything seemed to go your way." And as you could imagine, in a 13-1 victory, yeah, everything ends up having to go your way. Theo Fleury +9 in that matchup, which is one of the highest plus minuses in all of the NHL among its history. So pretty impressive stuff. And that was a year where everything was already down for the Sharks. It was an NHL record 71 losses that year for the Sharks. And there was extra context told to the Calgary Sun at the time, saying that Fleury reflected that unlike today's more sportsmanlike approach, teams in the 80s and 90s continued to press even with big leads, chasing as many stats as possible. So, yeah, there you go. Apparently, even the Reese stick from that matchup is in the Hockey Hall of Fame. So you'd imagine potentially with how impressive that performance was, being the NHL record holder now for most points in a game, it kind of makes sense that might be the case. So pretty cool stuff. Pretty big night for the Calgary Flames. That was back February 10th, 1993, as we explore this week in Calgary Flames history. Thank you so much for making Locked On Flames your first listen every day. Excited to join you on Thursday. We'll look back at everything we learned from the pre-Olympic break. We invite you to subscribe and follow. Please share the podcast. Please share the YouTube channel with those who might be interested in the Calgary Flames as we continue to push towards 700 subscribers. I can't thank you enough for the first couple of months behind the microphone on Locked On Flames. And of course, if you never miss an episode, we have made something for you. It is called the Everydayer Club, and that is where you get members-only Discord access. Jump in the server, interact with all the Locked On podcast hosts, and access to channels where you can interact with fellow Flames fans as well. Plus, you get the show ad-free on your favorite podcast app. Go to lockedonflames.supercast.com. If you're watching on video, we send you next to the first ever 24/7 Locked On National Podcast Network YouTube channel. And for those on audio, your second listen, please make it NHL Game Night with Locked On NHL. My name is Ryan G. Thanks for having fun with us. We'll talk to you again soon for more Locked On Flames.